In this lesson, we'll apply shadows to our fire hydrant and eventually begin painting the line work. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we laid down here our first level of highlight onto our fire hydrant using this color right down here. Now, let's go ahead and sample this one color darker than our base color here because we're going to begin painting in shadows in much the same way. So I want to come in here, I want to start at the top, and let's go ahead and just draw in a shadowed area, just like so. Now I may come in and draw that out yet a little further here. But we should be able to use the same technique using our fill bucket here, or our paint bucket rather, to actually fill in these pixels that are missing. So let's come in here, maybe just clean that curve up just a little bit. Just sort of like we were drawing a curve when we were doing the line work. Now, if the shadow is hitting right here, it's probably going to fall off somewhere in this direction, being that this is a flat surface. So I want to come in and sort of plan for that here, just like so. We'll fill that area in. And again, we're going to wrap that shadow around our object. Now, it looks like I got one of our black pixels, and we're not wanting to do that just yet. So I'm going to come in here, and we're going to paint that shadow around the surface here. Now, in looking at the way this lip is formed, I'm seeing here that there's a little bit of a curvature to this bottom part, and maybe the shadow actually wraps around even further underneath this, further defining maybe this crease in the lip. So I want to come in here like this and just sort of paint this in, and you know, maybe we don't go quite that far on that row of pixels right there, but I think this is something that where we could actually come in and even paint a little bit into our highlight area here. Just like so. Really creating a nice shadow that's wrapping underneath that here. So I'm going to come over, bring that over just a little bit further, and maybe even... Now let's leave that pixel in a highlight color. So we've got that shadow painted underneath that lip, and I'm going to continue bringing the shadow on down and around our the body of our fire hydrant here. So we'll just come in and continue painting down a vertical line right here. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. And let's go ahead and paint in some of these areas right in here. Again, we don't have to paint those in with our brush. We can use our paint bucket for that. So I'm going to come in now, and I want to draw in a shadow underneath this crossbar that's protruding out of the side. So maybe we come in here just like so. And we'll draw it in just like that for right now. And in reality, the shadow is probably going to creep up just a little bit here. Maybe something like that. Maybe we could actually even bring it up just a little bit there and even over here. And let's go ahead and bring this shadow down and around. We'll skip that ridge for right now. And we'll fill that area in. And again, we're going to bring this shadow off sort of at an angle here on this flat surface. And then let's bring it down right here. So we've got a couple of other areas that we can fill in here with our paint bucket. And then we'll move over here to the right side because we've got the underside of this crossbar right here that really probably needs some attention as well. So we'll go ahead and draw in that same vertical line right here, making sure to let go of shift to skip over the black line work for right now. Now we're going to get to the line work here in just a moment because the line work is a little bit different of a little different animal because it's really a stylistic preference. But you know, we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. I want to go ahead and shade these bolts in just a little bit. And maybe we could do this bolt up here as well. Just kind of hitting on several of these areas that we had, where the shadows would collect. Maybe a pixel there, maybe a pixel or two there. Now, in looking at this ellipse right here, maybe there's actually a shadow that sort of covers that area right there, but there's a highlight down here. So we'll go ahead and hit that for right now. And sample that shadow again. Let's go ahead and handle this little ridge right here because this ridge is collecting shadows just like it's collecting highlights. So we'll go ahead and bring that down, and I'm going to start bringing that shadow down along the bottom edge next to that black line. Just sort of like that. I may come up here and actually bring that in and around. Again, creating the underside of this where the highlight is falling off and into shadow. So that highlight's really not covering the entire ridge, both the top and the bottom side of it. And we'll just touch up a couple of other areas here. Maybe come in and hit a little bit of a shadow that's creeping up around this cylinder right here. And just like so. And maybe we could even do a little bit around the perimeter of this black ellipse. So really at this point, it's just looking for areas that we can add highlights and shadows to. So we've pretty much got every area covered here when it comes to the highlights and shadows. And I think that at this point, let's talk about the line work, because a lot of pixel artists will actually leave their line work black. And this is, like I mentioned before, it's really a preferential thing. But for me, I personally like to integrate the line work into the illustration. It makes it feel less harsh. It makes it feel more a part of the actual image, in my opinion. By blending the line work in, it really feels less like a coloring book, if you will. So I'm going to come in here now, and notice we haven't touched the darkest color here or the lightest color. So I'm going to come in and grab that lightest color first, and I'm going to begin coming in here and just kind of hitting a few of these areas with that color itself. Now I'm going to hit X, and I'm going to sample that darker color here just so I can work with both without having to come back down here to the bottom. And once I've done that, I'll come in here and make sure we get a little bit of that darker color here in these shadowed areas. Now, in looking at that darker color, I'm thinking that maybe it should be even yet a little darker. So I'm going to undo a few times, get rid of that, and let's come back down here to our swatch, make sure we have that same color sampled. We'll come in and we'll darken that up just a little bit and replace that. Alright, that looks pretty good. Coming back up here where we left off, and we'll just come in and replace some of this black line work with these darker colors and this lighter color. Now, I'm not going to replace every bit of the line work. I think that in the areas where the darkest of dark would be, then the black's going to be fine. But I think for the most part here, some of those areas are going to be fairly minimal. So I'm just going to come along here, and we're going to paint in the highlights, the brightest of the highlights and the shadows over the line work itself. So it's all, like I mentioned before, in an effort to really blend this line work into the final piece. So let's go ahead and hit X to switch back over to the darker color here. And we'll come over here and just sort of paint over this line work. I'm going to go ahead and leave it black right in here, and I may actually touch this up in between lessons as I've done a few other things, but some of the areas, like I mentioned, where I think the shadow is going to be darkest, I'll probably leave those black. So let's go ahead and switch back over to our highlight color, because I think the highlight is going to be catching the rim of this just a little bit here. Come in and paint that just like so. And we'll stop that highlight right about there. Maybe extend that one down a little bit. And let's go ahead and bring it up here some. And you can see how that line work's really starting to blend into the overall illustration here, now that we're not letting it be black in the brightest areas. So again, it's really up to you where you're placing which color of line work. It really is your image in the end. So I'm going to come in here, and I'll probably work down one side of this and probably do the rest of this in between lessons. But I just wanted to show you that, I don't always color my line work or leave it colored black. I think that a lot of times you can really benefit from actually painting the line work as well. So coming in here, just painting along sort of the underside of this crossbar, and when we actually start blending these colors together here in the upcoming lessons, we're actually going to get more into these chains. So I'm going to come in and color a few areas of this right now, but we're going to leave that primarily for when we start blending in our colors and really adding in a lot of the fine details. So let's come in and make sure we have all the highlight areas painted that we want. And let's come in, maybe hit this area right here a little bit. Coming down here, we'll hit the corner of that ridge, and maybe some along this line right here. But for the base of this ridge, I'm going to go ahead and switch to my darker color here. So we're getting a nice deep shadow here. And we'll pick back up and begin painting that highlight right here along this edge closest to the light source. And again, switching back to our shadow color to paint in some of these areas that probably shouldn't be black. Now obviously I'm not hitting every single pixel, and like I said before, I'll clean this up in between lessons just to make sure that it looks pretty good before we proceed. But I think you're getting the general idea of here of what I'm starting to do here as far as coloring line work. I'm going to go ahead and just color that bolt in there just a little bit. And let's come in and hit this area with a highlight. Maybe a little bit over here as well. And lastly, we'll come in and hit along this ridge down here. Just like so. And we'll hit this shadow right along here. Alright, so I'll go ahead and clean up this line work just a little bit more in between lessons, but in zooming out on this fire hydrant, you can really tell how, because of the shadows and highlights and the blended line work, this illustration is really starting to come out and pop out as a three-dimensional object. Now, we do have one challenge left to face when it comes to applying the shadows and highlights, and that's, if we look here, we've got a really harsh line right here where our highlight is hitting, and we've got a really harsh line right here where our shadow is hitting. I'm going to show you a technique in the next lesson that's going to help soften that just a little bit.